There was a blog I saw on one of your, somewhere in your archives. It was called "Have Trouble Disconnecting? Try Prayer." And what I found really interesting about that is the juxtaposition, because yes, I mean, so often we spend hours droning on our cell phones, and really what you're doing is pivoting them to do something productive, to seek God, to find God. And maybe, Alessandro, just maybe a little bit more about what you and your co-founders, your friends at the time, what else were you seeing across the maybe the ecclesial landscape, across the religious landscape, in addition to the societal landscape, that gave impetus to Hallow?
Yeah, it's a super important question. I think all the problems we saw then are still exist today and even potentially in greater magnitude, unfortunately. I think the first thing we notice around and was present in some of our own lives is just the disaffiliation challenge. More and more people are leaving the church in a world that is less and less culturally Christian. There's not that same support environment societally. And so people are really asking their questions like, why am I doing this? And what I think we observed was that kind of the leading with hitting people over the textbook with the textbook, which is sometimes kind of a bad habit we have in evangelization, kind of isn't good enough anymore. And one of my co-founders, Alex, had born and raised Catholic and then fell away from his faith to completely atheism or agnosticism, depending on the day of the week and his mood when he got up. But this idea that it has to come back to personal relationship, right? Like you can, without knowing God as a person and having that as a relationship of love, the rules don't really make sense. And I think if we've observed anything in the world, it's people don't want to be told what to do. And that extends into political life, economic life, right? People have this idea, this individualism in Western society, which has pros, but in this case has also some big cons. And so I think this idea of let's forget about all the other things that we're disagree on in life. Let's just start with personal relationship. And I think that was one of the really big two problems. I would also say that in that context, I'm a proud product of Catholic school education from grade school, high school, and college. And I think I'm part of what can happen when you lead with just kind of the pure intellectual part of the faith. That I love Thomas Aquinas. I think that the faith is capital T true, and I always believe that. But without that personal spirituality part, I didn't really allow that truth to permeate like what I was actually doing on an everyday basis. So I was working 7 days a week, 90-hour work weeks on Wall Street, and kind of being that disconnected life, which is obviously not what we're called towards. And that's the second big thing. Name a person you've talked to over the past couple weeks or month, and they, in the course of conversation, haven't said, or you haven't said that you're super busy or that you're super stressed, right? That seems to be the moment that we're living in, certainly post-pandemic, but even pre-pandemic, we're just in a world of busyness. And everyone struggles with that. And I think what often gets overlooked is Christ specifically speaks to that, right? He tells us, come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest, right? So this search for like personal relationship, problem one, and is God real? And the second one of just this stress and busyness and trying to find peace. Those are really the two things that we honed into, like I said, in our own lives. And as soon as we started looking around, we realized it was everywhere, which gave us confidence that, this is something that more than just a few people needed.
That was awesome. You said a lot there, and something that really got my attention was um, underscoring relationship. Relationships are paramount to success in our faith, and to develop a real relationship with God, right? And we're not, you didn't use these words, but, beating kids over the head with a dogma stick is not going to bring them to the truth that that transformative encounter with the living God through Jesus Christ that we've all experienced. And as a former religion teacher, I used to say to my students, in life, it's easy to believe in a God you've been taught to believe in, but it's easier to love a God you've discovered for yourself, because 1 John 4:16, God is love. And when you experience that kind of love, which is completely undeserved and unconditional, it stops you in your tracks and everything changes, right? It sounds like you had that experience as a younger man. I certainly did. My journey was much like Alex. Grew up Catholic. I mean, we're Mexican Irish. Please, we're very Catholic. But the world was very alluring, and you're right. Even prior to the pandemic, we can't blame the pandemic for the level of disconnection, distraction, and lack of presence that we have, not just to one another, but to God through contemplative silence, just to sit with God and to be with that.